people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. What is an ominous warning from Chantel Cameron to Katie Taylor and any of Katie Taylor's supporters, anyone urging her on ahead of this weekend's big rematch. In so many words, Chantel stated, Katie Taylor doesn't stand a chance.
If you've been following this channel long enough, you will have heard me say more than once that rematches are often won by the fighter who can make the most adjustments, the fighter who can change the most from one fight to the next. I really don't think that's Chantel Cameron because if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
What we can expect to see in this rematch, in all likelihood, will be many of the same things we saw in the first fight. Everything that was working for Chantel. And what was working for Chantel? In that fight with Katie, that first one, Chantel...
She put a lot of pressure on Katie Taylor.
Even though she's not an according to Hoyle pressure fighter, she can fight like one when the situation calls for it. Chantel, she toggles between two base styles. A lot of the elite fighters, the really good ones, they often do. Her and Katie, they actually both have that in common. Katie toggles between being a pure boxer and a boxer-puncher, whereas Chantel toggles between being a boxer-puncher and a pressure fighter. What is consistent between boxer-punchers and pressure fighters is the aggression, the bad intentions, the spite.
She is spiteful. You see what she's saying? Katie Taylor doesn't stand a chance. It was her intention from the very beginning to spoil Katie Taylor's big homecoming, and that's exactly what she did. She means to do it again.
That's why I don't expect much to change from Chantel from the last fight into the next, because she's not the one that has to make adjustments. She's not the one that has to change. It's not that she can't so much as she doesn't need to, per se.
When she fought Mary McGee, like when she fought Jessica McCaskill, Chantel fought them the way a boxer-puncher would. But when she fought Katie Taylor, like when she fought Ana E. Esther Sanchez, she fought them the way a pressure fighter would, staying on top of them, putting punches together, smothering them.
That's what worked for Chantel Cameron the last time. That's what I expect to see her do the next. That's what I expect to see her do on Saturday.
Katie approached those early rounds the wrong way, with the wrong base style. She tried to fight the fight the way a pure boxer would, creating space and looking to set up counters, but she doesn't have the height or the length to do that with Chantel.
So if Katie is smart, and she's been paying attention, she's got to show a little bit more dog, bit more early on in the rematch. And Chantel, I expect to see Chantel do more of what she did in the first fight. More volume, more pressure, more aggression, sitting on her punches, looking to pin down Katie Taylor, corner her, and unload. I think what Chantel is going for in this rematch is a knockout. She knows she can wear down Katie Taylor. She knows she can hurt her.
There really aren't that many bells and whistles to this approach.
It is a straightforward approach. It's long been said that Katie Taylor, for all her virtues, she doesn't handle pressure well. We saw that in the Jessica McCaskill fight and the first Delphine Persoon fight. But what we saw in the second was that Katie was able to make an adjustment to deal with that pressure and work around it. We might see that this weekend.
We might not. Chantel Cameron says that Katie Taylor, she doesn't stand a chance, where Katie says she expects to win a very convincing victory.
Katie is the one that has to change. She is the one that has to make adjustments, and rematches are often won by the fighter who can make the most adjustments. We've seen Katie Taylor do this in the past.
Can she still do it now at 37 years old against the bigger, younger, and stronger opponent?
There really is only one way to find out.
Eddie's a punk bitch. You see what I'm trying to say? Eddie Hearn has been protecting him long enough. It's about time he come back to America. He came to America. Andy Ruiz, a.k.a. I call him Taco Bell, not being racist because I'm black Mexican, believe it or not, whooped his ass. and he has not been back since. So at least give Mr. Cheeseburger himself, Big Baby, a chance to knock you out in America at some point. But you understand that you can't be a true champion if you come to America and get your ass whipped and never come back. Tyson came to America, conquered, and left. He's a real world champion. AJ came, got his ass whooped, ran with his tail, never came back. Bye.
What would happen if you fought AJ?
I'll knock him the out. Point blank, knock him out. He can't take pressure, can't take body shots.
Anthony can't handle pressure, he can't handle body shots, and Jarrell, he can't handle reality. He can't handle the truth. He seems to harbor a lot of rancor for Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn jointly when the only reason that fight didn't go through is because of Jarrell. It's Jarrell's own fault. You tested positive for the whole fucking pharmacy, and what are you expecting them to do? Allow the contest to go on?
How do you blame them for that? Even worse is that he got off on a technicality. The people at Top Rank picked him up, and before he can even make his Top Rank debut, he tested positive for more banned substances. He tested positive again!
Even if it is difficult, here and now, to wag your finger in Jarrell Miller's face based on his performance-enhancing drug fiasco, based on how many other fighters are having those same kinds of situations like Conor Benn, Alicia Baumgartner.
Eddie Hearn may not be able to sit on a high horse and wag his finger at Jarrell Miller about his drug fiascos. He might not be able to do that, but at minimum, it's still a self-inflicted wound, isn't it? At minimum, it's still his fault, and Jarrell is exhibiting zero accountability.
I suppose the silver lining is that Eddie Hearn isn't trying to. He's not preaching and sermonizing to Jarrell about how wrong he is. He's acknowledging that he has a place in today's heavyweight division, saying, if Jarrell Miller beats Daniel Dubois, he'll shout for Joshua, and then commercially, that fight becomes big.
When he first mounted his comeback, isn't that what I told all of you? That for all of his drawbacks and all of his faults, Jarrell Miller, he can sell a fight. He's a character.
It's a great fight. Miller will either get stopped or stop Daniel Dubois. If he gets stopped, then that's the end of Jarrell Miller. If he stops Daniel Dubois, he's right back in the mix. Hearn told Fight Hub TV, Miller has a long history of animosity with Anthony Joshua.
We covered that already. The point is that Eddie Hearn is now acknowledging what I told you guys months ago when Jarrell Miller first ramped up his comeback.
For all of his faults, drawbacks, and his dubious history with banned substances, for all of that, there is still use for him, and there is still value in facing him. Shutting up the loud-mouth American. A lot of people would pay to see that. So if by some chance things don't work out between AJ and Deontay Wilder, say Wilder, maybe he doesn't make it past Joseph Parker.
Maybe he loses or he gets injured. Something happens and he can't fight. There's another fight with another American out there, Jarrell Miller.
Anthony Joshua wants to smash him up. Don't forget the beef that those two had in New York. Then the round table, which nobody has seen yet, but I'm sure it will get released one day soon. There is history there, Hearn said. We know why the fight didn't happen, and there are a lot of people from our side that aren't happy with what he did. The fight has never come back round because I felt like he didn't deserve it. But sometimes time is a good healer, and if he can beat Daniel Dubois, then I'm sure he'll scream and shout in the ring and say, I want AJ. And then commercially, that fight becomes big. Good luck to Jarrell. I don't have dislike or hatred towards him. I don't like what I saw, but good luck.
Seems that Daniel Dubois could serve as the launch pad for Jarrell Miller and what is the rest of his career. Daniel Dubois, who's coming off that knockout loss to Alexander Usyk.
And the stage is set. For Daniel Dubois, the scalp of Jarrell Miller would be a nice feather in his cap. Lest we forget, Jarrell Miller is still an unbeaten fighter and a very good talker. For Daniel Dubois, if he can win, that would be an indicator that he's better than people give him credit for, and he has more to give to the sport of boxing, that we shouldn't write him off just yet. That's if he wins. But if he loses, he will service as the launch pad for Jarrell Miller into the next stratosphere. Here, you have a guy in Daniel Dubois who has a bad reputation for crumbling under the pressure. And it just so happens that's what Jarrell Miller applies. He applies pressure. He is a mid-range to inside pressure fighter, a big one.
You need certain ingredients to beat a guy like Jarrell Miller. You need certain attributes to beat a guy like this.
Intestinal fortitude being one among them, and I'm not sure that Daniel has very much of that. But you also need mobility, agility, to be able to use the ring, move around it. As he inches closer, you walk him into shots, you walk him into punches. Now, Daniel Dubois, he is explosive, he does have power, and I think punch for punch, he's a bigger puncher and a snappier puncher than Jarrell Miller.
But he's also monotonous. He is also robotic. All these things they like to say about Anthony Joshua, they actually apply more to Daniel Dubois than they do to Anthony, because Anthony has shown he can make himself elusive. He can make himself a moving target for 12 rounds, whereas Daniel, he's a little bit more slow, cumbersome.
Defense is leaky. This guy doesn't move his head. I mean, he doesn't move his head at all, and that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if he could protect it behind a decent guard, but we saw in the Joe Joyce fight, he couldn't stay out of the way of Joe Joyce's jab.
So how is he going to handle Jarrell Miller? Not because of how great Jarrell Miller is, but because of how great Daniel Dubois isn't. He has to be able to work under pressure. To beat a pressure fighter, that's literally what you have to do.
You have to be able to alternate between offense and defense seamlessly, using the ring, moving around and picking your battles, picking your moments where you want to open up, when you want to engage, and when you don't.
Your movements and your defensive prowess has to be fluid, because the one thing the pressure fighter's going to do is come forward and attack. So whenever you open up, you're open to be caught, you're open to be hit. Daniel doesn't move his head.
I feel like it's either Daniel's gonna knock him out early, or Jarrell is gonna knock out Daniel late. Force him to submit. I don't actually think Jarrell Miller has the same one-hitter-quitter kind of power that Daniel Dubois has, but he does throw punches in bunches, and what he likes to do is beat his opponents into submission.
It's mentally taxing, fighting a guy that size.
Jarrell Miller is really fucking fat.
He's a fat guy.
And he's a really fat guy. Woolly mammoth fat. Orca fat.
Can Daniel Dubois deal with him? Do you trust Daniel Dubois to handle the pressure?
Thinking about the question, I don't know that I do. I don't know that any of us can, based on how Daniel's dealt with pressure in the past, under the hot lights. So this is a good fight. And just in keeping with the theme of all things heavyweight, Big John Fury, the father of Tyson Fury, admits in the last 3 fights he has seen a bit of decline in Tyson Fury. And for one as boisterous as John Fury to make such an admission that he's seeing a slight decline in his son, what I hear is that
it's more than just a bit. It has to be, if he's admitting it.
John Fury believes his son needs more time to get properly prepared for Usyk. The 17th of February is the date they have got to work towards, but in my opinion, Tyson needs a bit more time to get his conditioning right and his weight right, John Fury told Metro UK. For my money, his last 3 fights I have seen a bit of decline. Not a decline in ability, but decline in strength, power, and physical condition. I don't know what they're doing up there. You have to address it. He didn't look like himself out there in Saudi. And once again, if one is boisterous and proud, as John Fury is making an admission like this, that he's seen a bit of decline in his son, then it must have been more than just a bit. Seeing the things that we don't see and being privy to what we are not privy to behind the curtain. He didn't look right. Everything had changed about him, his demeanor, his body. I was puzzled. He said he had been training, but there is training and then there is training. If you're going at your own pace, no one is going to tell you otherwise. No one is going to offend you or kick you up the backside. No one can teach Tyson Fury how to box or teach him more than he knows. All they can do is put on some muscle on here and there and make his body rock solid. For my money, he looked fat thin. He should have been better, a bit heavier, with a lot more muscle. Tyson is a mammoth fella. He needs to power up in the body department, and the only way to do that is a proper course. And they take time, and we don't have the time.
John Fury's evaluation of his son's condition sounds a lot like veteran trainer Shane McGuigan's evaluation of Fury's condition. Take a listen.
I felt that Ngannou won, but I can completely see the argument to say that he didn't because of the activity of him. But it's coming It's coming from a guy that's having his first professional fight against the best heavyweight on paper right now. Personally, I think Fury's slightly on the decline. He hasn't had a very competitive fight since Wilder, and even he hasn't had a very good performance since the second Wilder fight. The second Wilder fight was a brilliant performance for him. Third one, he got hit too much. Yeah, he got off the canvas and done the job. Dylan White, it's not elite world level. It's not the top. It's not the top boys, and Derek Chisora far from the top boys. So, if you actually look at it and break it down that way, it's like you can understand why he didn't look the best, and I think he potentially might be on the slide.
So Shane McGuigan thinks Fury's on the slide. His own father admits that he may be in decline, and whenever I say this, I always get at least one Fury fanboy that can't handle the sound of that. But look at how Tyson Fury treats his body.
Look at it.
Treating his nose to that booger sugar. Slamming down beers.
He's never been body beautiful. I don't expect him to be. But it's not like Tyson Fury has the reputation for taking care of himself in between fights. He doesn't have the reputation of a gym rat. And then how he's built, how most of the weight in Tyson Fury's body is actually in the trunk. It's not distributed evenly across his extremities and his trunk. He's top heavy is what he is, and he's got skinny legs that have been carrying that weight around for years. I imagine that's hard on his knees. I imagine that's hard on his ankles. Some say that Tyson Fury's legs are gone, or at minimum, they're not what they used to be, and he's about to fight a faster fighter than himself, a more agile and nimble fighter than himself, who, for me and my money, has better coordination and is much better out of the southpaw stance than Tyson Fury is. What Tyson Fury has managed to do over the years is be more agile and nimble than many other heavyweights, many other slow fighters, lumbering lummoxes, but he doesn't have that advantage over this guy.
He can outmaneuver those slow guys, those big slow guys with two left feet. He can do that, but what about this guy?
Shane McGuigan's professional opinion is that Tyson Fury is on the slide, and he has been for at least the last year and a half. His own father is saying something similar, that he didn't look himself, and he may be in decline.
Do you need further indication? Is his performance against Francis Ngannou, is that not enough? You tell yourself that, well, maybe the guy didn't take the fight seriously and he didn't train. But how much should he have to train for a guy who's never really boxed as a professional before?
Never mind the hyperbole about Fury being the greatest heavyweight of all times, or even today's best heavyweight. The real question is, how much should he have had to train to beat a guy who never boxed before convincingly? Because a lot of people aren't convinced.
You're saying he didn't take it seriously and he didn't train, but how much was he supposed to for a novice?
What does a guy need, 12 weeks? 14? What? Does he need a Rocky montage to be ready for a novice?
The writing is on the wall. You guys just don't want to read it.